Snape's motivations and redemption. One of the most striking differences between Snape in the books and Snape in the films lies in his motivations and the way his redemption arc is framed. In the books, Snape's allegiance to Dumbledore begins with an act that is, at its core, selfish. After overhearing Sybil Trelawney's prophecy about a child destined to defeat the Dark Lord, Snape rushes to deliver this information to Voldemort. He fails to recognize that this prophecy could endanger Lily Evans, the woman he has loved since childhood. When Voldemort interprets the prophecy as referring to the Potters, Snape is horrified. He immediately goes to Dumbledore, begging him to protect Lily. Crucially, in J.K. Rowling's text, Snape does not initially ask for James or Harry to be spared, only Lily. Dumbledore condemns this request, pointing out Snape's disregard for the lives of her husband and child. This paints book-Snape as selfish, motivated more by obsession with Lily than by any sense of nobility. The films handle this moment very differently. When Alan Rickman's Snape approaches Dumbledore, he simply says, "Hide them all." This change, small as it might seem, transforms the way we interpret the character. Instead of coming across as a man driven only by desperate love for one woman, he appears more selfless, concerned for the safety of the entire family. It makes him immediately more sympathetic to audiences who have not read the source material. The same difference carries over into the famous "after all this time" scene. In the books, when Dumbledore asks Snape whether he has grown to care for Harry, Snape does not answer with words of compassion. Instead, he casts his do Patronus, shouting, "Expecto Patronum." His Patronus demonstrates that his protection of Harry has nothing to do with Harry himself. It is solely about preserving the memory of Lily, whose own Patronus was also a doe. The coldness of this response shows that his motivation never extends to true affection for James's son. In the films, however, the exchange is softened. When Dumbledore asks the same question, Snape silently produces the Patronus, wordlessly proving his loyalty. This subtle difference allows audiences to interpret his action as an act of love that extends to Harry himself because Harry is Lily's child. By omitting his sharp verbal denial, the film portrays him as far more emotionally noble and far less conflicted. The end result is two very different arcs. The book demands that readers reconcile Snape's bravery with his cruelty, forcing them to grapple with whether his sacrifices outweigh his sins. The films, in contrast, strip away many of those sins, leaving audiences with the story of a tragic hero. In the novels, Snape's redemption is complicated, uncomfortable, and morally gray. In the films, it is far easier to forgive him. Treatment of students. Another major difference between book-Snape and film-Snape is how he treats his students. In J.K. Rowling's novels, Snape is a consistently cruel, bullying teacher whose actions leave long-lasting emotional damage on those he teaches. The films, however, drastically tone down this behavior, often framing it as dry sarcasm or even as dark humor. In the books, Snape's bullying begins immediately. When Harry attends his first potions lesson in Philosopher's Stone, Snape singles him out harshly. Before the class has even begun, Snape sneers at him during roll call, treating him with outright hostility. Later in the same lesson, Snape humiliates Harry in front of the entire class, berating him for not knowing advanced potion-making questions that no first year could reasonably be expected to answer. This sets a precedent for the way Snape conducts himself throughout the series, using his authority as a teacher to belittle and undermine his students. The films include this scene, but the tone is softened. Alan Rickman's Snape comes across more as a strict disciplinarian than as a true bully. While he does mock Harry for not paying attention, the scene lacks the venom and outright hatred present in the book. The adaptation reframes Snape's hostility as stern teaching rather than sustained cruelty. Beyond Harry, the books show Snape as an equal opportunity tormentor. Neville Longbottom becomes one of his favorite victims. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Neville's greatest fear, revealed during a Bogart lesson, is Snape himself. The idea that a 13-year-old boy's worst nightmare is his teacher is deeply disturbing. Snape mocks Neville in class, belittles his intelligence, and once threatens to poison his pet toad, Trevor. In the films, Neville's fear is shown only briefly, used mainly for comic relief when he imagines Snape in his grandmother's clothes. The deeper psychological trauma that underpins this fear is never addressed on screen. Hermione also suffers heavily under Snape in the books. He repeatedly calls her a know-it-all in front of her peers, even when she provides correct answers. At one point, he goes so far as to say that it is a pity she was not killed during a dangerous mission, a remark that shocks the rest of the class. In Prisoner of Azkaban, the entire group glares at Snape after he calls her an insufferable know-it-all, because while many of them had said the same thing in jest, they recognized that from a teacher it is abusive. In the films, this insult is reframed as a throwaway joke, punctuated with Ron's amused agreement, which shifts the tone from cruelty to humor. Remus Lupin provides another clear difference. In the books, Snape actively despises Lupin and takes steps to sabotage him. He lets slip to his students that Lupin is a werewolf, exposing him to public scrutiny and ultimately costing him his job. In the films, this element is omitted. Lupin resigns after parents learn the truth about his condition, but Snape is not shown as the one who outed him. This choice removes a critical example of Snape's vindictiveness, replacing it with a narrative where Lupin leaves on his own terms. Taken together, these examples show a profound divide. Book-Snape is not simply a strict teacher, he is a predator who uses his authority to belittle children. Film-Snape, in contrast, is strict, intimidating, and sometimes unpleasant, but his actions never cross the line into outright sadism. This makes him appear far more professional, if stern, and removes much of the moral complexity surrounding his role at Hogwarts. Relationship with Harry. The dynamic between Severus Snape and Harry Potter is one of the most central threads of the series, and the differences in how it is handled across the books and films completely change how audiences perceive their rivalry. In the books, Snape's hatred of Harry is raw and constant. He sees Harry not as an individual but as an extension of James Potter, his childhood rival. Snape projects his bitter resentment onto the boy, using every opportunity to humiliate him. He makes cutting remarks about Harry's arrogance, belittles his academic achievements, and repeatedly undermines him in front of other students. Dumbledore himself remarks that Snape only sees what he expects to see, the arrogance of James, and cannot separate Harry from his father. This constant cycle of comparison creates a toxic relationship that defines much of Harry's school life. The films dilute this antagonism. While Snape still treats Harry with contempt, his behavior is presented more as strictness or occasional cruelty than as relentless hatred. For example, in Goblet of Fire, Snape punishes Harry for supposedly putting his name in the goblet, but the books show him doing far more, publicly humiliating Harry, trying to have him expelled, and openly declaring him arrogant. On screen, these moments are condensed, which reduces the intensity of their enmity. The occlumency lessons in Order of the Phoenix illustrate this difference starkly. In the books, these sessions are brutal. Snape uses legilimency, the magical art of invading minds, not only to test Harry's defenses but to demean him. He hurls insults about Harry's father and his godfather Sirius, deliberately trying to provoke him. Their lessons devolve into shouting matches, filled with anger on both sides. Harry resents the invasion of his privacy, and Snape uses the opportunity to assert dominance and relive old grudges. In the film, these lessons are portrayed with far less hostility. Snape still references James and Sirius, but the tone is more restrained. His sharp remarks are framed as a way to motivate Harry rather than to deliberately wound him. While he remains harsh, the film version comes across more as a severe teacher pushing a difficult pupil than as a man reliving his childhood traumas through verbal abuse. Another crucial difference lies in Snape's role in Voldemort's rise. In the books, it is explicitly confirmed that Snape was the spy who delivered Trelawney's prophecy to Voldemort, setting the chain of events in motion that led to Lily's death. This fact intensifies Harry's resentment when he learns it, deepening the rift between them. The films reference the prophecy but do not emphasize Snape's responsibility as clearly, leaving his guilt underexplored. The result is two distinct portrayals. In the novels, Snape and Harry are bitter enemies, their relationship poisoned by years of resentment, guilt, and trauma. Snape's hostility is personal, stemming from his unresolved hatred of James Potter. In the films, their conflict feels more like a clash between a stern teacher and a rebellious student. By reducing the venom in their interactions, the adaptations soften Snape's cruelty, and in turn make his later redemption seem less fraught and more inevitable. Key plot events omitted or changed. While tone and characterization create broad differences between Snape in the books and films, there are also several critical plot events that were either altered or left out entirely in the movie adaptations. These omissions dramatically shape how audiences interpret Snape's role in the story. James Potter saving Snape's life. In the novels, one of the earliest defining moments in Snape's relationship with the Marauders is the so-called werewolf prank. Sirius Black lures Snape toward the Whomping Willow, hoping to expose him to Remus Lupin during a full moon. This cruel act would almost certainly have killed Snape. James Potter intervenes at the last moment, pulling Snape back and saving his life. On paper, this looks heroic, but Snape refuses to accept it as such. To him, James was only protecting his own reputation, ensuring he would not be expelled for causing a fellow student's death. This incident deepened Snape's hatred of James while binding them together in a twisted debt. The films never reference this event, which removes an important layer of complexity from Snape's feelings toward Harry and his father. The prophecy. The prophecy delivered by Sybil Trelawney in 1980 is the axis on which the entire series turns. In Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore tells Harry that a Death Eater spy overheard part of it and reported back to Voldemort. The books later reveal that this spy was Snape himself. By relaying the prophecy, Snape unintentionally doomed Lily and James Potter. This is the single greatest source of his guilt and the foundation of his allegiance to Dumbledore. The films touch on the prophecy in broad strokes but never fully emphasize that Snape was the one who passed it on. As a result, viewers of the films may not understand just how directly responsible he was for the chain of events that followed. Lupin's dismissal. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Snape takes direct revenge on Remus Lupin by letting slip to his students that Lupin is a werewolf. This revelation spreads quickly through the school and to parents, forcing Lupin to resign. It is a petty and vindictive act, carried out after Lupin and Sirius expose Snape's own humiliations. In the film adaptation, this detail is absent. Lupin resigns of his own accord after parents express concern. By removing Snape's involvement, the film lessens his cruelty and erases an important example of his destructive influence. Fake Veritaserum. Dolores Umbridge's reign over Hogwarts in Order of the Phoenix provides another difference. When Umbridge attempts to force Harry to reveal information about Sirius and Dumbledore, she requests Veritaserum, a truth potion, from Snape. In the book, Snape gives her a fake potion, secretly protecting Harry from interrogation. This small but significant act of defiance demonstrates that, beneath his hostility, Snape was working in Harry's interests. The films omit this entirely, leaving audiences unaware of the quiet resistance he showed against Umbridge's tyranny. Passing Harry's warning about Sirius. Later in the same book, Harry tries to warn Snape that Sirius is in danger at the Department of Mysteries. Snape pretends not to understand Harry's cryptic message, leaving Harry furious. In the film, this moment passes without further explanation, creating the impression that Snape ignored Harry's plea. The books clarify that Snape did in fact relay the message to the Order of the Phoenix, which is why reinforcements arrive in time to help. This difference alters the audience's perception of Snape's reliability and loyalty. The Half-Blood Prince subplot. Finally, Half-Blood Prince contains an entire storyline about Harry's obsession with Snape's old potions textbook, filled with handwritten notes and improvements. The mystery of the book's previous owner builds tension throughout the novel, leading to the shocking reveal that Snape himself is the Half-Blood Prince. In the film, this subplot is heavily compressed. The book is referenced a handful of times, but the reveal feels rushed, appearing almost as an afterthought. The absence of this storyline reduces Snape's complexity, erasing the chance to explore his genius as a student and his connection to darker forms of magic. Taken together, these missing or altered plot points shift Snape's role dramatically. In the novels, he is deeply entangled in the web of events that shape Harry's world, his actions both destructive and redemptive. In the films, many of these details are absent, leaving a streamlined version of Snape who is less morally compromised, less guilty, and ultimately far easier to redeem. Portrayal and tone. The portrayal of Severus Snape differs not only in the events that unfold, but also in tone, demeanor, and emotional intensity. Much of this contrast stems from the way J.K. Rowling describes him on the page versus how Alan Rickman embodied him on screen. In the books, Snape is volatile. He frequently raises his voice, berates students in front of their peers, and loses his temper in explosive outbursts. One of the clearest examples occurs at the climax of Prisoner of Azkaban. When Sirius Black escapes and Snape believes Harry was involved, he shrieks in front of the headmaster, "He did it! I know he did it!" Rowling's text emphasizes the sheer volume and rage in his voice, underlining how easily Snape is overcome by emotion. These moments reinforce the image of a man whose anger simmers constantly beneath the surface, erupting whenever his past grievances resurface. The films, however, take a radically different approach. Rickman's Snape rarely raises his voice above a whisper. He is calm, measured, and intimidating in his restraint. His menace comes not from shouting, but from precise diction, prolonged pauses, and icy glares. This controlled delivery makes him appear calculating and deliberate rather than unhinged. For audiences unfamiliar with the books, Snape seems like a figure of cold authority, never a man consumed by his own rage. The books also depict Snape as openly arrogant and vindictive. He lashes out at students who remind him of his schoolyard tormentors, insults Hermione for her intelligence, humiliates Neville for his incompetence, and constantly projects his bitterness onto Harry. His cruelty is not subtle. It is obvious to everyone in the classroom. By contrast, the films soften these edges. Many of his most abusive remarks are removed or reframed, while others are delivered in a way that borders on dry humor. The infamous insufferable know-it-all line in Prisoner of Azkaban is a prime example. On the page, it horrifies the class and paints Snape as spiteful. On screen, it is followed by Ron's agreement, transforming it into a moment of levity. Another stark omission involves Snape's obsession with Lily. The books describe unsettling details, such as him cutting Lily out of a photograph with James and Harry, or his possessiveness when James begins courting her. These moments show a darker, almost unhealthy fixation on Lily's memory, raising uncomfortable questions about the purity of his devotion. None of this appears in the films. Instead, his love is presented as tragic and untainted, casting him in the role of a loyal, heartbroken man rather than an obsessive figure unable to let go of the past. The absence of these traits shifts the balance of Snape's character. In the novels, his cruelty and instability make his eventual redemption difficult to accept, forcing readers to weigh his bravery against years of abusive behavior. In the films, his calm demeanor and softened cruelty allow viewers to see him as a tragic hero from the outset. By the time his memories are revealed in Deathly Hallows, his arc feels inevitable, the misunderstood guardian who bore the weight of his love in silence. If you want to understand these differences even more deeply, you need to see where they all began. Snape's life before Hogwarts, his childhood, and his complicated bond with Lily Evans shaped every choice he made later. For that, go watch our full breakdown of Snape's entire origin story explained in detail.